investigation. And since we're going to talk about media, it's important to mention from the beginning that most of the cases of grand corruption that have been discovered in the world have not been discovered by prosecutors or controller generals or the police, but basically by investigative journalists like it happened and it was covered here by the ICIJ, who are doing a tremendous work in covering corruption cases around the world. Recently, this bank, HSBC, has also caught in a huge scheme where around 106,000 clients of the bank that were coming from more than 200 countries have moved billions of dollars around the world in order to evade taxes and to launder money. This bank has been fined with an immense amount of money because it was proved that $881 billion were laundered by this bank, who is a very well-known bank from the UK, and money that was coming from the cartels of the drug in Mexico. And when we are talking about drug cartels in Mexico, we are not talking about an illicit business only, but we are talking about ferocious organizations that kill hundreds and thousands of people a year in Mexico. HSBC was also found responsible for laundering money for terrorist organizations in Iran. So what we are trying to express here is that corruption has no ideology. Corruption is only driven by the profit of the money, and the people that are involved in this type of crimes, of course, don't care if they are going to generate more killings, more poverty, and impact on the basic rights of the people. This is the Prime Minister of China, Mr. Wen Jiabao. He had acquired an amount of 1,980 euros, millions of euros, through corruption in China. He was the Prime Minister for more than 30 years. The niece of Mao Zedong, who's only 40 years old, has been proved to have 604 million euros in her personal accounts. And a recent investigation of journalists, a consortium of journalists around the world, has also proven that from the 315 billionaires that live in China, 153 of them are related to the official party. That means that in all those cases, we are talking about money that has been stolen from China by these public officials. Another examples of grand corruption, we have the daughter of the president of Angola, Isabel dos Santos. She has $1 billion on her personal account. She is now known as the most wealthy woman in Africa. So as you can see, there's no difference between the continents or the different economies where these people come. Rafael Marquez is a journalist from Angola. He has written a book on the Dos Santos family. The father of Isabel dos Santos had been ruling that country for many years, and he is involved in a lot of illicit schemes in order to steal money from the diamonds and looting also the state. Part of that money went to his daughter, Isabel dos Santos. Recently, the Petrobras scandal in Brazil has uncovered 3.7 billion business of corruption linked to this oil company from Brazil. And in some years ago, in 2009, I believe, Liechtenstein, this country that's a safe haven for people taking out money that has been stolen from their countries, has also been uncovered with a business of billions of euros from different parts of the world that have been funneled into this paradise. So these are only some of many examples we have around the world in these days about huge schemes of corruption. And Kierkegaard, who is an American professor who has studied corruption probably he's one of the best professors covering this topic, created this formula. And he said corruption equals to monopoly plus discretion of the public officials, less accountability. When you have all these elements together, be sure you will have big amounts of corruption. But note that the first element in order to have corruption is monopoly. And monopoly implies opacity, no circulation of information, no access to information, no transparency. So when there's opacity, where there's no circulation of information, where there's no transparency, corruption will always flourish. That's why media plays a very relevant role in the fight against corruption, because the media bring into the public understanding, because they monitor public decisions or processes driven by public officials. They mobilize people. The media can bring pressure to the authorities, and as I said before, most of the cases that have been discovered around the world have been discovered not by official authorities, but by journalists that have brought light to these obscure schemes that authoritarian regimes or organized crime groups that have taken power into several countries used to put around in order to loot the states and move illicit money around the world. So the role of media in this case is basically bringing light to the opacity where corruption flourishes. Once the information is put there by the media, then we can think about mobilizing people. Remember what happened in the Arab Spring. Most of it was brought into the streets because there was a lot of coverage of corruption practices in that part of the world. It's happening also in Brazil and some other countries around the world. So media here plays a key role. Monitors, investigates, and brings to light information that once it's circulated can give a very, very useful tool in order to address corruption. The problem is that we have good press and bad press. And I'm coming from a country where we had exactly this in a very graphic situation. While Fujimori and Montesinos were looting the Peruvian state, we have proven around $600 million that have been taken during that period. Some other people talk about $6,000 million. We don't have clear numbers up to date. So the good press was covering these situations and trying to put it into the public dominion, even though we were under an authoritarian regime. There was a bunch of newspapers and television that had been controlled by this regime, and they were trying to cover up all the irregular practices of Fujimori's government. So we have good press when we are talking about independent press that does not submit their work, their editorials, their interests to the power of the regime in turn. And we are talking about bad press when we have press that is controlled by power or organized crime, and they are trying to distort the facts in order to avoid clear investigations. In the Peruvian case, the guy on the left is Fujimori, the former president. The guy on the right is Vladimiro Montesinos, his personal advisor in intelligence matters. I will not explain in this case because it's quite complex, but what you need to know is that these two guys put in place a criminal network, and they were the heads of this with the general commander of the armed forces. They took control of all the institutions of the state, the electoral court, Congress, the judiciary, of course, the armed forces, but they also put a lot of effort and put a lot of money into controlling the press. From the 9 TV channels that Peru had at that time, they controlled 8. And we have this picture where Montesinos is putting all these things you see on that table. Those are millions of dollars in cash that he is paying to a broadcaster in order to control the news. They received these millions of dollars, and in exchange of that money, what they did was attacking their enemies and trying to cover up all the corruption that was being produced by these two guys. So bad press is also an enemy of the struggle against corruption because they bring confusion and they make it difficult to investigate. This is a reason why, worldwide, 39% of the people in different surveys believe that the press is corrupt. For example, in the UK, people believe that the press is more corrupt than the political parties. And that is a lot to say, because as you know, political parties are always at the top of the most corrupt institutions in the world. But in UK, the press is perceived as more corrupt than the politicians. And this is a terrible situation. Because corrupt press confuses cover-ups, support the corrupt, and it's also used as a weapon, as a means, as an instrument to attack those who are investigated. In many countries, journalists have been threatened and even killed because of campaigns that have been developed by this type of press that are under salary of the corrupt. So just to finish, I would like to say that now we have, on the side of the struggle against corruption, a very useful tool, and this is internet and technology. I mean, the crooks are not the only ones that have technology. Everybody now can have access to internet. And through these means, we have different groups in the world working in access to information, putting pressure on politicians in order to make it clear where's the financing of the campaigns coming and which are the assets that politicians have when they come to power. Transparency in public tenders is a big issue. Acquisitions with public monies is one of the most common places for corruption. On the private sector, there are many groups working through the internet and NGOs on access to companies' information. Many groups like Transparency International and others are working in the trace and track of illicit flows and beneficial ownership. And this is a key issue, the beneficial ownership one, because most of the cases of grand corruption around the world have been proved to have happened through offshore companies or shell companies. So Transparency International now, we are in a campaign called our No Impunity Initiative. Our campaign is called Unmask the Corrupt, and we are putting pressure on the G20 and other governments in order to put in place a global registry where everybody can go and see who is the ultimate beneficial owner of one of these companies. So I invite you, young people interested in the struggle against corruption, to join this. We are thousands of people struggling against this. We have several coalitions of journalists working together with anti-corruption NGOs, and in the future we expect to go forward with this campaign in order to reduce corruption in the world. That's the link where you can go and read more material, and if you are interested, of course, join our movement this effort. Thank you very much.